black economic empowerment, as we call it here, but in many countries, one way or the other, it's a form of localization. So if you got to find yourself in this maze, where do you start? So we then try and offer a seamless experience into that. And it starts sometimes with a basic thing as a visa.
Right.
You got to travel to the country. How do you get a visa? I'm a business person, and maybe in a country that's high risk, but I'm an investor, or I want to invest. How do I do it? So GGDA does that. On the GEP side, the enterprise propeller is the easier one because most of it is financing of small businesses. But we have the unenviable task of typically out of 100 applications we get, we'll approve between 1 and 10. So the 90 that didn't get, then either things were inefficient, we didn't get back to them, they believe in their businesses, and.
Oh, you gave your friends.
Exactly. So there's all manner of expectations and beliefs. But in reality, because the demand is so high, and we're getting the province now to agreeing to recapitalize and put in over time a little bit more money so that we can reach out to more people. But ultimately, it boils down to, does your business make sense? Because us as South Africans, and I mean, all of the money we use is funded by the taxpayer. Or even if we bring other partners, it's in a relationship with money from the taxpayer.
Right.
That taxpayer sits on a dinner table and is very skeptical. Tumelo got money to start Alex FM. Alex FM failed. Why did Tumelo get that money? It must be that Chinyo Saki. That can be the only reason.
Yeah.
That's why this thing has failed. And there isn't always the appreciation that small businesses are risky. Rule of thumb around the world, 3 out of 10 succeed, which means 7 out of 10 are likely to fail in the first year to 3 years of starting business when we're talking real startups. And that's why it generally is a role played either by governments or venture capital funds. But a lot of those funds, if they are completely private and they have no element that's government, because most of them, I mean, in the world who have succeeded have had some government help where there's, absorption of the risk.
Right.
Is that many businesses will now see big. I mean, we look at, let's say, Sasol. They were funded by the IDC when they started.
Yeah.
Omar Rusks, I think, was the first business that was funded by the IDC. Then there's many others. You go to Exaro and they have, and then you go to pension funds. I say to people, you look at MTN today, it's a listed company, one of the stocks that have performed very well over time.
Yeah.
But there's a time where it was a private equity deal. Somebody had to take a risk in it and believe what it's gonna be. So that's sometimes what is missed in the expectations. From all sides, entrepreneurs want to get money. If they don't get it, they think it's personal.
Yeah.
Because they believe in their business. But there are real risks. And when the risks materialize, then the same taxpayer says to me, we gave you money, you're not collecting the money, you're giving the money into bad businesses. What is a bad business?
Yeah.
And I like making very simple anecdotes about what it means financing businesses. So let's say today, Gauteng or the world is not short of restaurants. Somebody's going to start a restaurant tomorrow, shoots the lights off. Another person will start it and it fails. Sunglasses or spectacles, wearing spectacles. Today, there's enough brands in the world. You tomorrow can find a niche or maybe have a corporate that wants to buy from you, and you start a new brand and the brand succeeds. Or you're a big personality in the world, as we've seen either in South Africa or in other parts of the world, and you leverage that to sell different things. So there is no real formula, but for us, we're not competing with banks.
Okay.
We're not competing with businesses. really where we've got to find our niche is solving problems.
Speaking of solving problems, it said one of the greatest challenges that emerging businesses have to face also lies in the area of trade and marketing access. So let's talk about how your organizations actually promote growth in these areas.
So you have, let's say, BRICS. That's one example. There's European Union. That's one example. That's AGOA, which is largely the Americans. In each of the markets, there are certain either benefits you get, and because you're part of a certain club, or there are certain things you have to comply with. So one very basic example, the Americans will say we want to buy textiles from South Africa. And then what we call a jersey, they call it a sweater.
Yeah.
Now, if you are trying to comply with that rule and you are calling it a jersey, you are not having a product that complies with their market. If they say we have a tax break for people who are selling sweaters and you are giving a jersey, it's something else. So that then becomes what we call export promotion. So there's training on, in these markets, these are the standards, these are the rules, this is what you have to comply with. So we do that because that's what gives you access to those markets. Then there's what we call business process outsourcing. At a basic level, it's call centers, but it goes up to someone needs legal services, they need accounting services. But South Africa has a couple of advantages in that market. The first one is the exchange rate. So someone paying in pound, euro, dollars, we are cheap.
Okay.
Because the currency has weakened over time. But beyond that, because that you can't control, we have certain advantages actually out of our education system and language. So if you are somewhere in America or Europe, Australia or Canada, and you're calling someone and you have a query with your credit card, or you're trying to book an airline, you don't really want someone with a very heavy Asian accent, because then immediately you get a little apprehensive. Did I call the right place? And so South African accent, though it's not American accent, it's not English accent, it's neutral. There's acceptability to it, because a lot of the countries we compete with in this market are Philippines and the Indians, and so there are certain things that, of course, I mean, accents can be taught, and but for South Africa, it's something that has grown over time. Business process outsourcing. So these are the things we then do on a practical level to say, here's a sector, it has a potential to grow, and we now need to get our businesses out there and known that they offer a great service. And it's been growing. I mean, there's one entity that's based in Sentin. 60% of the people who work there actually are from Alex. And I think more than 50% of them are people who didn't have a job before.
Yeah.
And then they train them. So that becomes the impact of the work that we do in solving those kinds of problems. On what we call trade and investment, or as I said, economic infrastructure.
Yeah.
There were no pipes for water, because we use big words, but what it means is that this pipe is small, you have rooms which were meant for 4 people, now there's 100 people,
Yeah.
and this pipe just can't. That's why it's going to burst, there's going to be delays, and because the pipes were not big enough to accommodate the number of people that are now in those. So those are the things you got to do to allow, because a municipality will say, we can't allow a 300 apartment building here, because all this water, where is it going to come from? The electricity, because we didn't have it. So that's what we got to keep.
And as you keep that in mind, and as we talk about local business, particularly township-based businesses, it's like, I understand that you have a very exciting hub or program rather, if I can call it, the Ekasi Labs program. And this, I understand, it's to cultivate a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship within the townships. Just help us understand what that is also all about and how you're achieving your objectives and where exactly you're located with that. Because I think most of the times, you mentioned actually some of the risks associated with small businesses, and I'd like to add to say lack of information could equally be one of them, where you believe in your idea so much, but because you don't have the right information to propel you to a direction that would assist you, whether it's through funding, resources, mentorship, then you fall short. How does Ekasi Labs program actually try and meet those gaps?
So one of the subsidiaries we have is what we call the Innovation Hub, and they run this program in different townships that we call Ekasi Labs, and we learning from it on what works and what doesn't work, and we are attempting to improve it. But the starting point was, you have someone in a township who wants to start a business. Firstly, where do they get the information? As you said, access to information is the first step. The second thing, I now have the information, but I don't really have a conducive work environment to be in, where I can sit in an office-like environment where I have access to the internet, there isn't too much noise in the background. And then thirdly, how do I then get support from it? It could be financial, it could be an ecosystem of other entrepreneurs who are having innovative ideas. So you are developing an app in social, but as you're developing this app, you need access to Wi-Fi, and maybe there's someone who has Wi-Fi cheaper than what you would get in big telcos. And then you have someone else who is part of an enterprise supply development program of a big corporate who can link you up. So these really were meant to be centers that allow for exchange of ideas, access to information, and that in different townships. As I'm saying, part of what we're learning is that sometimes we're offering the very basic minimum, and the needs of entrepreneurs have gone a little bit further. But really these are meant to be contact points for entrepreneurs. And we say innovation, and sometimes the default is to say innovation means robotics and all manner of complicated tech stuff. Yes, a lot of them have innovation, a lot of them can enable stuff, but really for us innovation is solving problems. So if you, let's say now we've seen many companies who say townships have young people. Young people are the biggest demographic in the African continent. They are the biggest users of tech. So let's get closer to them. But we also know their affordability levels are not the same as established people. So let's find solutions where we can bring Wi-Fi closer to them at an affordable price. And that not only enables just social interactions, they can do gaming for money. They can do, animation, they can do coding, and. So those are the solutions. We saw when we had a lot of energy insecurity, there were many companies that were solving that problem. Bulk infrastructure, electricity, sewage, water. With all the infrastructure challenges we're having now, there's off-grid solutions where you don't have to put strain on rainwater, Tshwane City, and to do certain things. People are finding solutions that are fairly affordable, but they don't put strain on the grid. So that's what eventually these Ekasi Labs are meant to do, is to enable those entrepreneurs who have ideas to know where they can go, to know what support they can find, and also be in an ecosystem of other entrepreneurs.
And I think that's why it's important that you spend time elaborating on it so people can seek the information, because we are right now having this conversation in a township that we know every other corner there is a business, operating, and they would definitely benefit from Ekasi Labs programs. I want to also move on to, the clear evidence that, your company is also exploring development in business, or at least in the business world, in ways that, can be seen as also being very innovative, Saki. I mean, for example, the reference in one of your publications is something that is called the Constitution Hill Creative Hub. What's that all about?
So Constitution Hill, and as with a few other sites, have now recently been declared World Heritage Sites. And this is really very exciting at many levels because a lot of World Heritage Sites, it's physical. There's a story, but a lot of it is based on the physical structure. Where people can go, this is 2,000 years old, and this and that and that. But a lot of what got Cornhill, Lily's Leaf, is what they called then the Mandela Legacy Project. And what it was about is reconciliation. Is what South Africa, well, we don't own it, but one of the good examples on how reconciliation can be done.
Yep.
Where bad history has not always led into being punitive. You had freedom fighters who said, we'll choose a route to try and reconcile than to fight and kill each other, or even post these, truth and reconciliation commissions will allow justice to be served in a manner that's not an eye for an eye. And Constitution Hill is a physical and, even in terms of ideology, embodiment of that. You have what was a jail, and a lot of the prominent freedom fighters, and there's many who are not as prominent who were there, but people died there. Yep. They were tortured. They lost their minds. They lost families. There's trauma that comes out of it. But in the very same place, you have the highest court of the land, which is the Constitutional Court. So you have these things living side by side, which are a reminder when people visit Constitution Hill, they will be told the stories of women's jail and how women were treated. There's different, even racially, how even a basic thing as a uniform. If you were white, you had long pants. If you were colored or Indian, maybe half. If you were black, it's the shortest. So it was very visual on how the discrimination was, but now things have changed. So it's that story about how South Africa has grown and how it has changed. But World Heritage Sites, by their measure, are supposed to benefit not just themselves and the people around them. So there's a lot of emphasis on urban renewal. So the Constitution Hill can't just be an island. People who visit there must feel safe to cross the street and buy amagwinya or buy crafts. So the people who go there must benefit the community, that it's not just this island where I take a red bus and I'm there, or I take a ride and see and get the story, and off I move. You would want the restaurants around it to benefit. So Constitution Hill really, it's urban renewal, it's tourism, it's increasing the circle of people that can benefit out of these monuments that we have.
Another interesting reference on top of the Constitution Creative Hub is the Automotive Industry Development Center. I'd like you to give me more background on that, Saki, because I think this is work that needs, to be shared. 285 unemployed township-based young people who were trained in automotive skills, while 62 township-based SMMEs were upskilled in the automotive sector. Take me through that background.
So South Africa has a number of what are called OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, who do cars. So by way of example, I may not mention all of them. There's many now that have gone also to the Eastern Cape that are new. But traditionally we've had Ford, BMW, Nissan, Toyota, VW. Now you have Buick and many others that have come in. You know, there's Tata that's largely based here, and these OEMs have come to South Africa on the back of the Department of Trade and Industry providing certain support. So they say, well, we'll give you some tax breaks on what you're doing, or we'll give you some subsidies to make sure that you can produce profitably in South Africa. And that's how it has been maintained. But in return, we've then said to them, okay, you can't just produce here. We also need to have South African companies that supply you. And that's what the Automotive Industry Development Center then comes in on training entrepreneurs who want to supply certain components. There's one in Tshwane, for example, that does bumpers and some of the components on the exterior. That individual who got the contract wouldn't have gotten it if it was not for the AIDC, because these companies have their own international supply chains. There's minimum requirements to be met. So you have to walk a journey for them to be comfortable you can meet their requirements.
Yeah.
Because even, let's say, forget whether you have the quality and you meet the minimum requirements on what defects you can have. There's also just in time. We're doing 700 cars a day, and in this line we need a bumper at 12:45, 100 of them. The next batch comes at 13:45, and you need someone who is able to deliver and understand all of those. And that's where then the AIDC comes in, is to prepare these companies to meet those requirements, but also to keep reminding the international companies that they have local obligations.
Right.
Because it's easy for people to make an excuse. No, there aren't enough Tumelos who can supply us with the quality that we want. And we keep saying, no. Tell us what it is they must comply with, and we will make sure that we develop enough Tumelos to do it.
That's amazing. And that's where the training comes in. And so far, I mean, just when we look at this particular training that we are referring to, 285 unemployed township-based young people were skilled. They were upskilled, and 62 townships as well. Those 62 township-based SMMEs, equally upskilled. An interesting conversation that I don't want to leave you out of. Please prepare your questions or comments in case you want to engage with Saki or myself. The number to dial is 011-440-1396. We'll be taking your calls in just a moment in this conversation, so make sure that you don't miss out in case there's any question that you would like to ask Saki Zamkaka. Perhaps you've heard something and you are an SMME yourself and you're interested in having him elaborate further on that point. 011-440-1396 is the number that you can dial. But let's continue with this conversation, because I want to get as much as I can out of you, Saki, before we actually get to the callers. You know, your organization equally being active in another, particular incentive scheme, if I may call it that, the Global Business Services Incentive. And according to my understanding, the primary objective there of the Global Business Service Incentive is to create employment in South Africa through servicing of offshore activities, as well as the creation of international markets in our townships. That's quite, visionary for someone that's hearing it for the first time. So give us a much wider understanding about what you're hoping to achieve then, what it's all about.
So as I said, these business process services started basically being call centers. People are outsourcing a call center and saying, I'm running an airline, I'm running a bank, but I just don't want to manage a call center, or I want someone who can do it cheaper, or I want a sales force that's gonna, so end. So South Africa said, okay, this is a global business. Where can we go to other markets to make it work. But the realization was it may need certain subsidies for it to work. So the DTIC has put subsidies for that sector. But where part of then the envelope we are pushing is, if you are in a call center, why must you take 3 taxis to reach to where you need to be?
Yeah.
So you are in Mamelodi and maybe the call center is in Manlin. How many taxis do you have to take to get there? Even if it is one, what is the cost? Because then people end up spending maybe a third of their income on transport to get to where they need to be. So the move is to try and put some of these call centers closer to where people live. But where the incentives come in is that if a call center is in a township, again, is there enough bandwidth for Wi-Fi? Is it safe? If you are doing a bank in Australia, they have different time zones.
Yeah.
So you could be knocking off at 2 a.m. Is it safe for you to walk to work if you are in a township? And the funny thing is that it may be that when you are in Sentin, somebody offers you transport at night to get home. So when you are in Sentin, the shuttle drops you in front of your house.
Yeah.
But maybe when you are in a township, there's a kilometer to walk. Is that safe? So those are the things then government has to do to try and create this environment that works, because everyone says, okay, I would really love to have a call center close to where people are, but I also have a responsibility to make sure that they come to work and leave and come back the next day without dealing with certain problems. So safety becomes a big thing. Then the second one is then the infrastructure. Can I do backup electricity in the site that I'm in? Is there enough space? Am I allowed by the municipality to build a site that can have 1,000 people? And that's where then we are. But it's a sector that has been growing across the country.
Yeah.
And we think it's going to continue to grow. But certain things have just got to be fixed for it to work.
Absolutely.
So that's where the incentives come in.
Also, on the other hand, something that you name the special economic zones. And I understand that this is about the so-called geographically designated areas of a country really that are set aside for economic activities that are specifically targeted. It's like you're said to be very active also in this environment. So please share with us, an understanding of the work that you're doing there.
So there's a couple of examples. I mean, we have Val, West Rand, OR Tambo, there's TASES, which the province has done. So forget the acronyms, but the main thing about them, let's take the one next to the airport. We'll call it Gauteng Industrial Development Zone, OR Tambo Development. It's in Bedaro Park. In the East Rand. One of the things we've learned as an example post-COVID is supply chains are no longer as predictable as we would like. Not only COVID, we had an incident in the Suez Canal where there was a ship that blocked traffic and everything else delayed. So things that were traditionally maybe on rail and traditionally shipped, various companies are looking at whether they can air freight them. Because if you drive a car that may be European, Asian or American and you take it in for service, if they have to order a part and the part is going to take 3 months, you don't really want your car in a dealership for 3 months.
Yeah.
So the automotive sector started saying, maybe we need to start fighting some of these things because it gives us reliability with our customers. The agriculture sector also has started saying, we have high value agriculture commodities, so maybe berries, are small, but they give us good margins. For freshness, we need them out as soon as possible and to where they need to be as quickly as possible. That is one example. The other one, jewelry. It's high value, very small, so you can freight it and easily. So that industrial development zone, special economic zone, was created for that. Initially started as a jewelry manufacturing park. We now have people who are doing energy, green energy solutions. The first actually big tenant was called Into Foods, and they do food packaging. They also do food packaging for Marks and Spencer in the UK. So again, the idea was as they develop, they will get a benefit of tax because they are exporting, but it's close enough to the airport that you can package things here, they land to the destination where they need to be sold in the same day. They are still fresh, and so those are the things, but that wouldn't again have happened. It was close enough to the airport, but you still didn't have bulk infrastructure. You didn't have the pipes for electricity, for water, for sewage, for people to expand into it. So that park helped the businesses which were directly there and the other ones wouldn't have. But what it also does is that someone else can now build their own storage and factory and anything else because there's a pipe nearby that they can plug into, and that gives them the bulk. So that's what the special economic zones have done. And the other one, as I said, in Tshwane, Ford wanted to expand and do the Ranger here, and government put in money to make that work. And in the Val, one of the American banks has put in money again on infrastructure. So that's going to enable further development to be done.
All right, once again, that number 011-440-1396. If you have a question, we might be taking your question and your calls after this.
Frank Dialogue on your radio with Dr. JJ Tabane. Let's talk frankly.
This is Frank Dialogue on your radio. If you have just joined us, oh man, where have you been? You've just missed out on a lot of information being shared by, of course, Saki Zamklaka, who joins me today to talk more about the work that they do as the Gauteng Growth Development Agency, but also the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller. And trust me when I say it was all to benefit you as a community member, as a small, medium enterprise owner, as even a potential investor in the Gauteng province. And, as we continue with this conversation, I think it's even more exciting to hear the opportunities that lie ahead for you if you are entering into, the entrepreneurial world, if you're seeking, support resources, non-financial support, mentorship, and you're thinking, where can I go? We're just about to wrap up our conversation with Saki Zamklaka, and it's been such an informative conversation, Saki. I think perhaps let's wrap up or gear towards concluding in the next couple of minutes by just asking, from a more personal perspective, are you optimistic about what the future holds for this province's young entrepreneurs? We talk about the youth, but I'm sure Mama that have been, raising us on Amagwenya, raising us on Mihodu, because we know there are many of them that are relentless and they want to learn the technology. They want to make sure they keep up with the times and information. But for everyone contributing to this ecosystem, are you personally optimistic?
I am, and maybe part of it is my job is to be optimistic.
Yeah.
I get paid to do that. But outside of it, if you look at certain high-level indicators, we're starting to have the economic growth forecast revised upwards. That's always a good thing because it's a sign of confidence. I often say, and these are not my words, managing economies is creating confidence about the future. Because generally people are on, do I think things are going to be better tomorrow? If they don't think things are going to be better tomorrow, they behave today in the same way because let me wait until I think things are going to be better. So the economic growth forecast being revised up is a big thing. The other one, which seems also high level, the exchange rate, and also inflows on people investing in our equities. If our equities grow, you have PIC and many other funds that are invested in it, so things lift up. The exchange rate firming up, that's why we're seeing further decreases on fuel prices, because we pay for crude oil and other fuel-related things in dollars. But also for government pays a portion of its debt in dollars. So when we strengthen, it eases the pressure a little bit. So there's a lot of ratios that are economic, and economists, go on and a lot of big English about it. But in reality, they mean a lot of good stuff for us. So I think now we at a point where people were not sure, where are the politics going to put us, what's going to happen. But we've now entered a very exciting era where people are like, actually politics don't mean things are going to change much. We have all of these political parties that have come together. They've formed the government of national unity. So it no longer matters who has what majority. We have a country that keeps moving forward. So I think there's a lot of optimism. But on top of it, there's a portion of our country we don't, I think, talk much about the arts. The arts now, contribute into the GDP more than mining. Just to put it in context. And I was talking to another friend saying there isn't a significant art fund. If you go to mining, there are many funds that specialize in mining, but the arts, which actually now have surpassed mining, don't get as much. But our artists continue to make us proud. And they remind us we're great. And the sports people, we met with the India Business Forum and the Consul General of India, and they were saying a lot of sports genres in India are recruiting South African coaches because we're doing well in many sports, and that there is also opportunities of taking young Indian kids into South Africa to learn, because we're good in rugby, we're good in cricket, not as good in soccer, but if you look at the women's soccer and how far they've gone, there's netball, there's hockey, so there's many sports which we're actually doing well. Some countries specialize in one thing. But South Africa, just in many fields, is doing well. Our DJs, Amapiano, jazz, South African jazz has been legendary over time. When you look at most of our fine arts, South African artists, if you look at the most expensive art in the continent, contemporary African art, there's a significant portion of them that are South African artists. So there's a lot which, if we're focused on really what we're doing well and pushed it, it can benefit all of us.
Your last message, to our listeners this evening who have, I'm sure, garnered a wealth of knowledge regarding not only what you do, but how they benefit. Your message, but also your message of encouraging agency, because we spoke about expectations a bit earlier, and in every marriage, I think each one has a role to play, not just the GEP, not just the GGDA. What is the role of Gauteng residents in the greater scheme of our conversation?
I think the easiest one that shows this, I often say to people who come to GEP that figure out what it is you need assistance with. And we don't often want to hold ourselves accountable. So it's easy to say this one is not doing this. But when you go to funding institutions, and I think this applies to many areas of government, know what you want. It's either you want money, so it can come in the form of debt or equity, but you want money to grow your business. Or you're at a point where you have an idea and you need someone to help you either with feasibility or a business plan, but it doesn't help to sit with a funder and you don't know what you want. You're not sure whether you want a loan or you want to be helped with a feasibility, because we can't advise and fund you at the same time. There's a level of distance we've got to have and say, you came to us and said this is what you want and we'll give you. Because if I say, oh, Tumelo, has come, she wants to do shoes or computers, and now I walk a journey in advising her. When I don't give you the money after all of this journey, you're going to say, but you, for the past year, you've been telling me this is what I must do. Now, I want the money.
Exactly.
So there must still be the distance, because again, it's taxpayers' money. We have to be accountable on what we do, and ideally fund those that have a better chance of survival and hopefully better impact. So if anything, I think get up and do something may not always give you the results that you want, but fine tune what it is that you actually need.
Saki, thank you so much for speaking to me this evening. It's been such an insightful conversation, and I'm sure it's benefited many residents. And thank you for just educating us. Oftentimes, we take the time to point fingers and blame institutions for not doing their work without even knowing what they do actually and understanding where they're coming from. But sharing with us just the scope of work that you're doing and also walking this journey with Gauteng residents, much appreciated, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, Saki Zamtlaka joining me, the CEO of the GEP and acting Group CEO rather, of GGDA, joining me this evening just to share a wealth of knowledge and insights with regards to what the organization does, how they absolutely are committed in assisting with regards to the economic growth of this province, but more so the individuals, the human beings that reside in it. And I'm hoping that you got a lot out of this conversation, and I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us and listening in. It doesn't matter from where you were listening in, whether it's Kofifi FM, Tete FM, EK FM, Alex FM, Sosha FM. Shout out to all of you, and thank you so much for spending your evening with us. And of course, my great appreciation to Prof. JJ Tabane for entrusting me to hold the fort in his absence this evening. I wish you well. I wish you safety and love. Thank you for joining us, and have a good evening. Goodbye.
Frank Dialogue on your radio with Dr. JJ Tabane. Let's talk frankly.